Speaking of crocodiles, an image of menacing animals often comes to mind. Known for their dangerous potential, their sudden appearance can send shivers down our spine. Now, can you imagine what it would feel like to be encircled by a dozen of them? Little Nancy, a young girl from our tale, found herself in this terrifying situation. But what unfolded afterward was nothing like anyone anticipated. Intrigued? Let's dive into the story. In 1953, an unforeseen event occurred when a quaint town introduced an unusual attraction, the Crocodile Farm. Operating like a touring band, this spectacle would remain in one place for a specified duration. The news spread quickly, gaining the attention of the townspeople. Zoological exhibitions were not novel, but the idea of trained crocodiles sparked intrigue. It offered something out of the ordinary, and people were eager to be a part of it. On a typical day at this tourist locale, crowds buzzed with enthusiasm. Brave souls tossed morsels of food beyond a fenced area, or even climbed onto the backs of the semi-aquatic reptiles, exhilaratingly engaging with them. The faint-hearted preferred to keep a safe distance, observing from afar. One day, a family of three, a couple with their 5-year-old child, decided to visit the Crocodile Farm. Little Nancy was a pint-sized, chirpy girl. Upon their arrival, they were greeted with a cautionary sign warning about staying away from the creatures. It was likely meant for the untrained or unpredictable crocodiles. Nancy's father, intrigued by the sight, gleefully captured the moment on his camera, where Nancy beamed with excitement. While this was happening, Nancy's mother struck up a conversation with a fellow visitor. They discussed how the alligator farm attracted locals and was also a crowd puller for nearby towns. Its popularity was unquestionable, and with limited days of availability, it turned into a packed spectacle. The crowd was so heavy that many children often got separated from their parents. Engrossed in their conversation, Nancy's parents didn't notice her growing restlessness. Tired and bored, she nestled down and began observing her surroundings. During this, she noticed a small opening in the fence. While it was not large, it was big enough for her to squeeze through. Curiosity got the better of her, and she approached it, finding a dense patch of vegetation on the other side. Wondering about what lay beyond the fence, Nancy looked at her parents and tried to get their attention by shouting and waving, but they were too immersed in their discussion to notice. With each unsuccessful attempt, Nancy grew more distressed. She swiveled to face the opening, bowing her head as her petite size allowed her to take steps forward. The rudely made fence snagged at her clothing, yet undeterred, she continued on her path, entering the lush greenery. Rising from her knees, dirt and grass hitched a ride on her hands. After dusting herself off, her gaze caught a commotion in the near distance. Intrigued, she went to investigate. Initially, all she saw was a mud pool, but a sudden movement from the thick grasses caught her attention. Proceeding cautiously, she parted the grass to discover an alligator trapped in a precarious situation. Nancy's first instinct was fear, propelling her to retreat hastily. Upon closer inspection, however, she noted that the poor reptile's tail was ensnared by a chain, its malnourished state indicating a long duration, without food, and a depleted will to fight. Empathy took over, her heart reaching out to the weak creature. She chose to help, drawing from the bread her parents had supplied before she had ventured out. Adopting a bold stance, Nancy squatted low, carefully slipping the food into the alligator's gaping mouth. The offering was accepted readily, devoured the moment it was presented. While the alligator was distracted by its meal, Nancy bravely approached the tree, released the chain, and set the captive free. The alligator, finally free and nourished, began to regain its vigor. Informing the creature to get moving towards its dwelling, her heart filled with joy as it seemed to understand her words, disappearing into the foliage. A warm sensation of accomplishment enveloped her as she contemplated the life she had just saved. With the shadows of evening approaching, she darted back, retracing her journey. The joy in her heart reflected on her face as she emerged from the gap in the fence. Anxious calls from her parents greeted her arrival. Responding promptly, she stood tall. Upon spotting her, her parents rushed to her side, hugging her tightly, peppering her with concerns about her whereabouts and well-being. Fearing she would add to their worries, she chose to bend the truth about her escapade. Omitting her brave act, she mentioned that she was driven by curiosity and framed the situation as a playful adventure. Her parents sighed with relief, interpreting the situation as a case of mere child's play. Relieved to see their child safe, Nancy's parents led her back home. As she settled into her familiar surroundings, flashes of the incident kept coming back to her. Memories of the daring rescue elicited giggles, and she silently hoped for the alligator's reunion with its clan and wished for its well-being. Her heart filled with good intentions, Nancy drifted off to slumber. The following morning, Nancy awoke to golden sunlight dancing across her cheerful features, her dreams bringing her warmth. Eagerly, she swung open her window, welcoming in the rays of the sun. Soon she spotted something near her entryway, which piqued her curiosity. Rushing to investigate, Nancy opened her front door to find a crocodile lounging lazily. Just as she readied herself to extend a kind exchange with the creature, a group of another dozen crocodiles emerged to join the first. Overwhelmed with fright, Nancy teared up. As the group inched closer, she began to retreat, crying out for her parents' assistance. Hearing their daughter's terrified shrieks, Nancy's parents rushed out immediately. Upon witnessing the alarming sight of a dozen crocodiles, Nancy's mother instinctively pulled her into a protective embrace, while her father seized a branch, ready to fend them off. The family felt a rush of adrenaline as danger approached. However, in a surprising turn of events, the lead crocodile produced a fish from its mouth, dropping it at Nancy's feet, followed by the others disgorging fish as well. Suddenly, Nancy remembered her experiences from the previous day and began sharing them with her parents. Once they understood the crocodile's intentions, they began to ease up. Nancy gradually reached out, tenderly petting the textured skin of the lead crocodile. Soon, the whole group began swarming around her as if they were old companions. With mutual appreciation exchanged, the crocodiles leisurely departed, leaving Nancy and her parents to bask in the sunlight. The lesson from this tale is simple. Nancy's act of kindness toward the crocodiles cultivated a unique bond. It's crucial to remember that all creatures, big or small, experience a variety of feelings, just like us. The diversity in life is a testament to equality among all beings, and it's unjustified to shun any creature based solely on their perceived frightening appearance. It's essential for humans and wildlife to coexist in harmony. Timothy's fishing outing was a definite triumph that day. As he surveyed his captures with immense pride, his net near the shore brimmed with fish, their silver bodies struggling, making the water alive with activity. A satisfied grin adorned Timothy's face as he contemplated whether it was his top-quality bait or just a fortunate day. Once more, he sauntered by the riverside, deftly maneuvering his fishing lure over the water, hoping another famished char or lennox would bite. But as his eyes flicked back to his net, he detected strange movement nearby. Evidence of thievery, he thought. Timothy felt a surge of irritation. Swiftly, he snatched his fishing pole and hastened towards his catch. A fox attempting to steal a quick meal, he speculated. However, as he drew closer, an unanticipated scene caught his attention. A young bear cub loping away, carrying a large fish in its mouth. "You light-fingered thief," he exclaimed. His outburst, however, was more out of amusement than irritation at the petite, clumsy creature and its robbery. "All right, you crafty little scamp. Watch and learn," he chuckled merrily. Looking over his remaining catch, Timothy noticed the cub had barely managed to sneak into his nets without indulging in a tasty, fishy treat. "I've got a surprise in store for you," he thought, still chuckling at the image of the cub absconding with the stolen fish. The rest of his fishing day proceeded without further interruptions, with Timothy catching another dozen chars. As he was packing his gear, Timothy spotted the little culprit approaching his nets again. "Hey, what do you think you're up to?" he questioned, standing up. But the cub was swift. It grabbed another large fish and made its escape. "You tiny miscreant," he mumbled, picking up a stick and chasing the cub. As he neared the area with raspberry shrubs, he hoped the cub's mother wasn't around. His apprehension quickly gave way to his desire to scold the thieving cub. But upon witnessing why the cub was stealing, all his anger melted away. The cub was bringing the fish to its sibling, who was bound with a lengthy chain under a pine tree. "I see you have a compassionate heart." "Fascinating," Timothy realized, observing the chained cub eagerly eating the fish his sibling had brought. With this revelation, any ideas of reprimanding the cub vanished. Instead, he returned to his catch and picked a few more fish. "Here you go, enjoy," he said, throwing more fish to the hungry cubs. The original little thief watched from a distance, wary. The chained sibling, however, accepted the man's presence without showing aggression. "Look at you. You're incredibly smart. Quite daring, too." Timothy tried to reassure the captive cub gently, intending to free it from its binds. With some effort, he managed to unchain the cub from the triggered clamp. The freed cub quickly hobbled into the nearby shrubs on its hind legs, with its sibling close behind, almost as if guarding it from the man. "Go on, run to your mother, you clever little devils," the man said, smiling as he watched the siblings retreat. This peculiar encounter would stay etched in Timothy's memory for years to come, though even the sweetest of recollections can fade over time. In the course of a couple of years, the event of the fisher coming to the rescue of a troubled bear cub had receded from memory. On this occasion, Timothy relented to persuasion from an impromptu group, setting off into the taiga to gather pine cones. The group's 3-week plan to stay in the wild tugged at Timothy's heartstrings. Since he was a kid, nature and expeditionary adventures had held a special place in his heart. Plus, the prospect of earning some cash was a bonus. He mused and accepted the offer. And so, a camp was established in the heart of the taiga, flanked by towering cedars and other magnificent flora. The presence of tents and campfires gave it a rustic feel. Fortunately, there was a generous yield of pine cones, which often didn't require them to shake the tree trunks. The cedars readily gave in to the first strike, dropping their massive cones. Quickly collecting them, the group filled their stocks for nut vendors. After amassing more than enough, they agreed it was time to return. Before setting off, however, Timothy wished to add some mushrooms to their collection. They were pure and made an excellent addition to winter salads. Equipped with a large bucket, he ventured deeper into the forest. He traveled a fair distance from camp until he came upon a thriving patch of mushrooms. Immersed in this tranquil pursuit, Timothy strayed even further away from their encampment. The sound of human chatter and machines faded into silence. The forest became eerily quiet, as if the avian population was under a spell cast by a magical woodland spirit. While gathering mushrooms, Timothy couldn't shake an unsettling vibe around him, causing an uneasy shiver. Instead of panicking, he thought it best to keep his nerves in check. All he had to do was recall his path and stay on course. The challenge, however, was how one remembers a path when nearly everything looks the same. Even as he tried hard to suppress his feelings, panic slowly settled in. He cursed the mushrooms, regretting the sight of a bucket that moments ago brought him happiness. Nevertheless, rallying himself to regain his nerve, he picked a direction he thought was right from memory and lumbered onward. He observed the area meticulously, hoping to find signs leading back to camp. To draw attention, he yelled out every now and then, but his calls were met with silence. His only companion was the unnerving quiet that surrounded him. Having roamed for more than 60 minutes, he acknowledged that the course he had taken was misguided. Despair set in. The sun dipped toward the landscape, and he was still lost without finding the correct route. Although he trusted his group would never forsake him, the thought of enduring the night solo, without protection and sustenance in the woods, was very unsettling. Who could promise him that he would find the correct path come sunrise? Timothy nestled down beneath a tree, his back against the stump, and concealed his face with his palms, trying to figure out his next course of action. Then out of the blue, he perceived a stir and the snap of splitting twigs from the shrubs opposite him. He tensed up, and sure enough, a massive russet bear appeared within seconds. The bear's fierce stare, its gleaming black orbs locked onto him, made Timothy spring up as though burnt by scalding water. He steeled himself, anticipating the bear lashing out at him, forcing him away from its domain. However, against his expectations, another bear walked into the glen, limping slightly on one of its back limbs as it moved closer to its counterpart. The pair of bears sniffed around, apparently oblivious to Timothy's existence, and began to engage with each other playfully. As Timothy took in this scene, he recalled his run-in with the bear cubs that filched his fish. He tried to remember which limb had been ensnared by the trap. It all seemed to add up. These were the same bears that had sought his assistance in the past. With this newfound clarity, Timothy realized it was unlikely these bears would cause him harm. He picked the route that seemed most probable, and despite the hushed silence, embarked on his journey with a smidge of newfound assurance. Even without total comprehension as to why, Timothy began to relax somewhat with this revelation, despite the fact that the bears might have long forgotten about him and had nothing stopping them from pouncing and tearing him to shreds. Instead, they growled playfully, occasionally throwing glances at him and peeping from the foliage, as if encouraging him to follow. Well then, Timothy thought, I don't have any other alternatives anyway. With his personal collection of mushrooms in hand, he followed the bears through the dense woodland, journeying through the darkened forest terrain for some time. Navigating alongside the bears began to feel increasingly taxing for Timothy. However, to his surprise, he discerned the sound of a human voice. Persistent calls of his name pierced through the quiet stillness of the night. A surge of happiness swept over him, and unintentional tears of joy welled in his eyes. It was incredible. Having these wild creatures essentially save his life was a sudden realization, a repayment of kindness for kindness. Spying a figure gradually approaching in the dimness, Timothy allowed himself to rest against a tree, descending slowly, quietly shedding tears of relief. Friends, have you ever witnessed animals seeking help from humans? It's common to hear about humans aiding animals, but how frequently does it truly happen, and in what ways? This episode showcases incredible recorded instances of animals that individuals fortunately captured. Now consider this scenario. You're cruising through the ocean in a boat when you spot a massive shark hunting a turtle. The likely response? You might opt to record it, but seeing the turtle's desperate struggle for life changes things. The hero of this video made the call to aid the turtle. When the shark backed off momentarily from its prey, the vanquished turtle was drawn over to the boat for a brief rest. The reprieve allowed it to gather the strength it needed to continue on its journey. Next, witness a man freeing a large whale from the entanglements of a fishing net. Interestingly, the whale seemed to know where to signal for help, bravely swimming up to the man's boat. It's no small feat to rescue such a mammoth creature, and yet, here we watch a man do just that. Despite not succeeding on its first attempt to return to the sea, the whale eventually manages to do so. Another clip showcases the kindness of a man towards a dehydrated eagle by providing it with water directly from a bottle. Travelers on the roadside noticed the eagle, who surprisingly displayed no fear of humans. It quenched its thirst freely and developed a bond with the group. Squirrels, known for their charm, are popular amongst many. Their lifespans, however, are relatively short. Statistically, 75 to 80% of squirrels don't survive past their first year. Encountering a squirrel entangled in fishing line, immobile, and seemingly pleading for aid, a pair of individuals armed with scissors stepped in. The juvenile squirrel fostered such a strong bond with its rescuers that it didn't want to leave when first freed. It felt drawn to them, but at some point it would vanish into the foliage, only to promptly reappear in the palm of its rescuer. The gentleman decided to take the squirrel home with them. They constructed a mobile enclosure and organized a unique challenge route for the little critter. And so the squirrel stayed with them until the next spring arrived. A puppy cried out in distress when it got tangled in a piece of canvas. A law enforcement officer approached the puppy, grasping hold of the entangling fabric. The task wasn't simple, but the man successfully ripped a section of the canvas off and saved the little dog. The puppy stood up instantly, embracing its rescuer gratefully. A man spotted a famished wolf and chose to feed it without second thoughts. Surprisingly, the animal showed no signs of fear towards the man. Instead, it seemed comfortable with close human presence. After bidding farewell, the man intended to leave, but the wolf stood in his way. The man had no more meat left, just his bread to offer. The creature followed the man for some time longer, either out of gratitude for being fed or simply requesting more food. A bear cub found itself accidentally trapped and was clearly hurt and fearful. However, swift human help arrived. Ultimately, the bear found freedom and ran off, presumably in search of its mother. Rescue teams now arrive to aid a cow with its head tangled in a tree. Unable to move aside, the cow also faced the threat of being targeted by a male bovine. Their efforts at rescuing it were impeded by a waterfall. Tasked with moving the branches, the rescuers finally set the animal free. In the Pashi Desert of Rajasthan, India, a parched leopard was found with its head stuck in a jug as it foraged for water. Remarkably, the leopard did not panic or attempt to flee. Instead, it calmly waited for help to arrive. After a tranquilizer shot, rescuers managed to free the leopard's head. A man climbed up a light post to save a pigeon ensnared within its structure. In another scene, one can see 4 orcas trapped within ice, including 2 in nearly unreachable spots. The ice is closing around them, pushing them to call for help. For rescuers, divers, and volunteers, it is crucial to manage the ice to prevent the orcas from injury. The animals are constantly moistened with water, yet occasionally they flip onto their backs, which could lead to suffocation. Hence the necessity for the rescue team to stage a meticulously crafted operation. A bond with the creature, the aquatic professionals converse with the orcas, both soothing and motivating them. In this video, a 6-meter creature is shown, injured yet peacefully completing its routine. The humans delivering commands are met with no hostility. The orca nonchalantly allows the rescue team to complete their necessary tasks. After a veterinarian examines the creature, it swiftly reunites with the rest of the orcas. Deep underwater, Joshua Lees, a diver, encountered a lemon shark. It bumped into him as if trying to communicate that something was amiss. Upon closer inspection, they found a peculiar object jutting out from its stomach. It was a substantial, deteriorated fishhook. Removing it was demanding, but they knew the shark's wound would recover quickly. Next, we witness a large but vulnerable shark caught up in the complexities of a tangled rope. It patiently awaits as a human helps to loosen it. Though the shark is now free to swim, there's uncertainty that it won't get caught up in such a predicament again. Whale sharks are not commonly spotted creatures, and over the years their population has gradually dropped due to illegal poaching activities. In one instance, we observe a fisherman removing barnacles from a small harmless turtle. You'll notice that its entire body, not just its back, is engulfed with these shells, even the belly and the head. Encrusted crustaceans are common acquaintances of sea turtles, often using the turtles as their base. However, too many can lead to discomfort and may result in tumors or infections. In one peculiar case, an American condor named Betty was found in a severe condition. Its beak was almost entirely missing. A group of specialists decided to rescue and aid the bird using breakthrough technology. They created a replica of the beak with 3D printing technology, which took months. It took several hours to attach the 3D printed nylon beak, but eventually they succeeded. The story culminates with Betty returning to her usual environment and drinking water. Next, an incident unfolded in the Pacific Ocean when a surfer named Todd Andrews was threatened by a great white shark. A herd of bottlenose dolphins formed a protective barrier around Todd. The shark managed to attack him, inflicting injuries to his back and right leg. Gradually, a rescue team successfully got both Todd and themselves back to safety, providing him with the necessary medical attention. Todd states that without the assistance of the dolphins, the shark would have torn him apart. It's heartwarming to witness mutual aid between humans and animals. And hopefully, there's more love and goodness in our world than negativity.